Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Empowered to Advocate podcast. I am Dana Marie, and I am joined here with Michelle. And we have a little bit of a different podcast for you today. We just last week dropped our 11th episode where we kind of gave you some tips and tricks and strategies and things that you could implement and answer some common questions about special education. But today we're going to quickly reintroduce ourselves for those new followers, for the new people who have picked up the podcast or just started listening, a little bit more information about who we are and how we got here. So I'm actually going to kick it to Michelle to begin and give us a little bit of her background and how Empowered to Advocate came to be.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Dana Marie. So a little bit about myself and what I do and why I do it. I guess a little bit of a resume, if you want to call it that. I graduated with my undergrad degree in elementary education in 2003, and then got my master's degree, Master's of Science in Special Education in 2005. I then began to work full-time as a special education teacher at a private school for students with autism and who had significant needs in the way of needing support, for which, especially in 2005, a lot of public school districts did not have that level of support in place in more inclusive sort of settings for students. So I started working there. I was a lead teacher in the classroom for 2 years there, working with upper elementary school and early middle school. It was a 4th to 6th grade classroom. So I was there for 2 years and then saw an opportunity to work in the district that I currently am still working at full time, which was really kind of serendipitous because I had actually done part of my student teaching at this particular school in this district. So was able to start working in an inclusive environment with students with disabilities ranging from specific learning disabilities to emotional disabilities to autism to ADHD, the whole range in an 8th grade co-taught model, working with those middle schoolers and supporting them in accessing their content. From there, I worked as a writing teacher. I left special ed for 1 year as a writing teacher, and then went back into special ed as the middle school special ed math teacher. So teaching small group specialized math instruction. I can't remember how many years I did that for because I am still at that school. And I'm at that point now where everything kind of blurs. It kind of blurs into one. And I have now been the team chairperson at that school, overseeing the initial evaluations, reevaluations, helping to, with programs at our school. We have inclusion programming K through 8 at the school that I work at, as well as a in-district, in the school specialized program for students with autism, who we work very hard at getting them included as much as possible. We also have the middle school therapeutic program at my school and an assessment center for when we're really trying to figure out what supports a student requires in hopes that we can have them participate in school in district as much as possible. And I know we have not yet done an episode on least restrictive environment yet. That's coming up. It is very, very important to me. I'm very passionate about inclusion and giving students an opportunity for inclusion as much as possible, to be around the school culture, to be around their age peers, for modeling, for social interactions as much as possible, and access to the grade level content. Now, sometimes the least restrictive environment is actually a more specialized program or specialized school. And it's really important to take all of those pieces for what is going to help a student be most successful in whatever placement they're in. But I'm very, very passionate about inclusion and making inclusion an opportunity for all students, even if students are out of district, trying to find ways to help them be included in the community as much as possible. So I've been team chair for 9 years And so it's 2023. So I've been in education officially for 20 years.
Woo-hoo.
And before that, I worked in after school programs and preschool programs. And so I've been doing this a really long time. And I'm always learning, always growing. And the reason I wanted to start Empowered to Advocate with Dana Marie is because working with parents for as long as I've been working with parents and really seeing and observing how much parents don't understand about this process and how scary it can be. And as much education as I aim to do and try to do with parents, I'm very limited time-wise and even communication-wise. So this is an opportunity to close that gap between home and school and I think there's also lots of instances where advocates can feel very scary and overwhelming, and it can create, whether it's intended or not, an adversarial situation around the team table. And that may not be the intention of the advocate at all, because the advocate is working really hard to get what they believe is most important for that student. But I think that there's a better way of doing it. And I think empowering caregivers and parents to be advocates is really where we can close that gap in a more communicative and less adversarial sort of way, so that it's best for the children. So that's who I am and why I do this and why I wanted to start this. And I love it. And I think it's really important work. And I think it's work. There's still this we're going to work with schools or we're going to work with parents. And I think that it's really possible, and it should be, that we are all working together because it's the kids who matter the most in this, and getting them the supports that they need based on the data, what the data is showing, right?
Yeah. I should also say serendipitous that you ended back where you ended up because you met me.
That's true. Absolutely. How did I leave that out?
So I'll actually start there and work backwards. So prior to this year, I was also a team chairperson for special education in other districts. They might be referred to as an ETL or a special ed admin. There are different names. In LEA, they all sort of mean the same thing. But I did that for the last 5 or so years. And actually, Michelle was a mentor of sorts to me when I started 5 years ago, because I was kind of thrown in the middle of the school year to cover for somebody who had to leave that year, and learned quite a lot from her. Prior to that, I was also a special education co-teacher at the high school level in social studies, in English, worked with tons of co-teachers in tons of different classrooms and environments. Before that, I was actually a general education high school teacher in social studies, history, sociology, psychology, lots of the social sciences. And that was sort of what I originally set out to do. But when I, like Michelle, got my master's degree, I got my master's degree in moderate disabilities and special needs, knowing that at some point I did want to work with students and with children with disabilities, but I wasn't quite sure at that point what that would look like. So it's been a really rewarding path up to this point to be able to kind of find my way through special education, and like Michelle, work in all sorts of settings, inclusion settings, substantially separate settings, overseeing a substantially separate program for students with intellectual disabilities and autism at the high school level, working with transition age students 14 to 22 for the last couple of years, has been amazing. Getting to see young adults learn and grow and then transition out of high school and their transition programs into adulthood, whatever that looks like for them. So that's kind of where I landed, and a little dissimilarly from Michelle, I decided to leave my full-time school-based job in June and work on Empower to Advocate sort of full-time. We're going to call it full-time because I've also been finishing up school this year at the same time. So part-time and part-time. And now that I'm about to finish school, I will be working for Empower to Advocate really full-time now. one thing that we set out when we started about a year ago at this point with planning and coming up with the systems for Empower to Advocate is exactly what Michelle said. And we really had the privilege, and Michelle still works at a school, of working with lots and lots of parents and caregivers and families and really learning what they need through conversations, through IEP meetings, through email communication, and realizing that in a school-based role, whether it's a teacher, a chairperson, an administrator, there are only so many hours in the day, and it can be challenging to try to meet all of the parents' needs in that amount of time when it comes to information and when it comes to access to information. And so one thing that we really set out to do here is to not gatekeep information when it comes to special education. We believe that everyone should have all of the information they need to be a participant, whether you are on the school side, the family side, the community side. Everyone should have the same information to be able to participate fully in IEP meetings and working for a child's special education programming. And so I've just been really lucky this year to be able to do this outside of a school. Really lucky to have been able to do it for the last 15 years inside a school. And Michelle and I are really looking to and hoping to grow and work with even more families as we, believe it or not, trend towards the end of the school year at this point, and thinking already about the beginning of next school year. So that's, I guess, a little bit about how we both got here. I think that it's so funny because we actually get this question a lot from the families that we work with, the parents that we work with, honestly, from our own family and friends. Like, what made you make this jump? What made you do this? What made you start this? How did you go from being a classroom teacher or chairperson to doing something like this? And I really think that we saw, obviously, a need, and we saw a gap when it comes to information. And so even if you don't work with us one-on-one, you may have noticed at this point that we share a lot of information in our newsletter. We share a lot of information on social media. Like I said, we don't want to gatekeep that information. So we want to share what we know about special education, about the process, so that as a family, as a parent, as a caregiver, you can make informed decisions. In our next episode, we're going to talk a little bit more about what it's like for folks to work with us, for parents and caregivers. What are some of the things that we help people with? What it's like to work with a parent coach or an advocate. We're going to get into that in way more detail next episode. But I think, it's fun, for lack of a better term, to share how we got here as well. Michelle and I started out as colleagues doing the same job, sharing a lot of information between the two of us, mentoring others, mentoring other teachers, and then realizing that we had information that we really wanted to share with a wider audience.
And I think one of the things that's really also unique about who we are and how we got here is we do have the perspective of being in the school setting, and we also have a very wide ranged network of folks with specialties and specialists that we work with, from speech and language pathologists to occupational therapists to transition specialists to teachers of the visually impaired, right? So we have folks that we are in collaboration with all the time to also have that network of knowledge. So, because we can't possibly know all the things all the time for every unique situation, and every child is unique. So it's really helpful for us to have the perspective of being in the school and also having that wide network of folks that we met through working in the school to help support our work with coaching caregivers. So I love that we're able to do this.
I also love that we're able to do this. That is all for today. We just wanted to do a super quick introduction, but like I said, listen to next episode where we really talk about what this looks like. We get a lot of questions, like I said, from parents, caregivers, but also from our own families and friends and people that we know in the community about what it feels like and what it looks like to work with an advocate. And the easy answer is it's different for everybody and it's different for every family. But in the next episode, we'll talk a little bit about some of the specifics and some of the things that we offer that might eventually be helpful to you or for you. So stay tuned, as always, on Friday mornings for new episodes, but definitely stay tuned for next Friday when we will go a little bit more into depth about that. Until then, thank you so much for listening. If you haven't listened to the 11 episodes up to this point, go back, and would love to hear from you. Drop a comment, a like, drop us an email. But we're grateful, thankful for you listening, and we cannot wait to talk to you next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.